Hi, Wallace.
Hello, Chad.
Thank you for meeting me today.
My pleasure. Yeah.
I appreciate you. We came together today for you to share your experiences on your journey, your inner journey, your outer journey on life. I know you're a spiritual teacher in Ireland. So just to ask a little bit more about that and what kind of information you can give the general public on life itself, mate, and just the journey.
My own experience of life has taught me that our inner life and our outer life always mirror one another. They're all manifestations of the one life. So, for example, on my spiritual teacher practice, I help people address and master the challenges in their life. And I do that by developing their spiritual awareness so that they're able to master the different challenges, and they use the challenges in their life as a vehicle for developing that higher awareness. So it's a practical spirituality rather than an academic one. And it's great because people can apply it to getting a new job, changing career, fixing their marriage or their relationship. Doesn't really matter what aspect of life. And as they do that, they grow in spiritual awareness and come more and more aligned with the present moment in their journey with me. So that's really good for them. It's good for me. And we do it in community, and I do it with people individually as well.
Sounds perfect, mate. So where did your journey start in all of this? Where did it, were you religious as a child? Were you brought up in a spiritual kind of environment, or was it something that changed over time through a personal experience of yours? Where did it the ball start to roll with all of this?
When I was 14, I was brought up a Presbyterian in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And when I was 14, I was getting nothing out of the Presbyterian religion. So I decided to stop going to church, much to my mother's horror. So the minister was wheeled in to have a word with me, about this. But I think he saw he was onto a lost cause because I've made my mind up. So ever since then, I kind of turned my back on what you might call conventional religion. I would have been kind of quite atheistic when I was a young man. But I always had a spiritual leaning. So, for example, in my 20s, I used to go to a meditation group in Belfast, and I got involved in meditation. And then at the age of 23, I had a massive experience, which was schizophrenia. So I developed paranoid schizophrenia and had to leave college. And I went back to college a year later, but I was not the person I'd been. I only just scraped through college, and I could never hold down a job after that. So basically, I had to find a new direction and a new path for my life at that point. And I can't quite remember. To be honest with you, it's difficult for me to go into my past spontaneously, because I have a piece written about it on my website, because I live now so much in the present moment that it's actually a struggle for me to remember what's in my past, honest, But I just live in a kind of present moment zone, and so that's why I'm quite hesitant when I'm talking about this.
Obviously, for a lot of the people that might be watching this, they might not understand, what we're talking about in terms of the past and the association with now.
Yeah.
Because they hold potentially so much onto the past, and they associate so much with it. So if you can just explain to them that a little bit more, maybe. How you live now in terms of in the present moment, rather than holding on to a past identity, and how you explain that. If that's what you're saying, you're not holding on to a past identity, you're living in the present moment. Is that what you're kind of saying? Yeah.
Yeah. People know about living in the present from Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle talks about living in the present, and he kind of promotes it a lot as a lifestyle. I wouldn't say lifestyle choice, because it's not something people can choose. It's something you have to grow into. But what people don't realize about living in the present is it's not all pluses, you know. For a start, you have to live your life with very little practical memory, you know. So it can make, you have to live differently, because your memory isn't functioning like a normal person's, but like an unawakened person's memory would be quite sophisticated and full up. But when you're coming from a place of present moment awareness, there's a lot of empty space in there. Not a lot of memory or anything else. Equally with planning the future, like about the only thing I plan for the future is what time's the bus or something like that. Or, you know, I mean, I live in a zone. It's hard for people to fathom that don't live like this, but I live in a zone of now and present moment. So there isn't a lot going on outside the present moment for me. What I follow in my life is I follow energy. There's an energy in me has me do certain things. Like I feel drawn to do certain things at certain times spontaneously, but it's a very blissful state, because there's no worries or no stresses in that state. But it is a different way of living. I'll tell you that up front.
I think this is what's important, and what I'm trying to pass the message on to other people. You know, the way we live at the moment, the world does, is a very stressful means. It's so panicky, anxiety, looking to the future. And this way of living that you're describing, which I'm aware of, is a better way of living. But it's a kind of living, as you explain, that you've got to grow into and you transition yourself into. You can't just snap your fingers and do it. So how can we pass this message on to the public in a way that they can understand it or grow into it to help them? You know, I've got sisters, brothers, family members, and the conversations with me, they're worrying about this, stressing about that, and I can't see it a lot of the time. You know, I have to bring myself into their perspective to understand it, and I'd love for them to step into my perspective sometimes, and the outlook you're saying, to be able to take that a little bit more easier, not as hard. You know, there are still ups and downs, of course there is, but it's how you take that, isn't it? It's how what thoughts rise to you and all these different things that come. It's how you interpret that and how you handle that. You know, and at the moment, I feel that we can change that a little bit through what you're saying.
Well, people, spirituality is massively misunderstood, in my opinion. It's a human attribute, which is undeveloped largely in most people. And like you say, Chad, people don't realize it holds the practical means to live in a modern, complex society. It holds the key to that. People would be aware of mindfulness and living in the here and now through mindfulness, and they practice that. But true mindfulness or true present moment awareness isn't something you practice. It's something that you are effortlessly. And so these practices and things can give people the idea that this is hard work, you know, to live beyond your stress. I talk about living in what I call unshakable inner peace, which is living in a state where no matter what happens to you, see, in your outer world you cannot control. You know, shit happens to everybody, including me. But your inner world, this must happen exactly the way you want. Otherwise, your life's a bloody misery, you know? So, so that's what I do in my training.
But back to what you've said, isn't it like it's a little bit of a paradox, isn't it, to an extent? Because the ultimate thing is you don't have to do nothing. It's already there. It's ultimately like kind of letting go and just becoming what you are. But on the surface, it almost seems like you're transitioning and growing towards something through meditation and all these things and breaking down barriers. You know, there's a little bit of a paradox there, isn't there, in terms of that? Because it's always there, isn't it? But it seems apparent that you're developing or almost unwrapping, taking away parts to unreal something that was already there.
What I say is spirituality is about becoming aware of the different identities that you operate out of in your life. So, for example, I could have the identity of an Irish person. I could have the identity of a husband. I could have the identity of a spiritual teacher, you know.
Yes, it's another one.
But the thing is to have all these, become aware of all these identities and actually let them go and not live out of the identity itself, but live out of what I call your true and authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And your true and authentic self is your real spiritual nature. It's actually who you really are. And when you live out of that, you don't have to do anything new. You don't have to learn anything new, but you do have to become aware of and let go of these various identities that you carry around with you. And when you do that, your true and authentic self will come to the fore and express itself in your life quite naturally.
That's beautiful, mate. Yeah. Part of my kind of experiences through my awakenings is I tend to see people as the same as me. You know, I see within you and within every person behind an ego and a personality and an I, it is bliss, pureness, beauty. And, you know, I often see ourselves as forgetting this, almost like the Peter Pan story, you know, that we forgot ourselves, we forgot who we are. Have you got any thoughts on the ego and I and personality? Does that transition into what you've just been speaking about, these different on top of what you really are?
My own view is that personality is something you're born with. You're born with a certain personality and you carry that through your whole life, and you have it as a spiritual person or you have it as an atheist, or it doesn't matter what you are, you'll have your personality. It's the way you operate in the world. It's your quirkiness. It's what your wife loves about you, you know. It's whatever. Or maybe hates about you. So there's your personality. Then the ego is different from your personality. This is my own opinion. Your ego is different from your personality in that your ego comes from your fears and your anxieties about yourself and your life. And it motivates your anxiety, it motivates your behavior through your personality, but does so from a fearful foundation. Whereas your true and authentic self is coming from love, and you're motivated through your personality, but from a love motivation, if that makes sense.
Of course, yeah. And what would you explain this love is? You know, because there's conditional love, as we all know, and there's unconditional love. So this love that we're speaking about, what is it, the ego and the personality that stop this love prevailing? You know, because it seems to be there.
Well, from where I'm coming in my role as a spiritual teacher, I introduce people to love as an energy, or as a force or a power in their lives that's all around them, that's within them. It's actually the divine itself is love. It permeates everything. And as much as we're cut off from that divine power, we struggle in life. So for example, in my life, whenever I need something, it comes into my life pretty much on cue, you know? So that's the love force in my life, bringing me what I need when I need it. Now, that didn't happen by magic. It happened because I developed myself to a point where I became defenseless as a person. And when you're defenseless as a person, I mean, if you simply observe this, the number of times you say no when somebody offers to help you with something. That's a simple example, right?
Yeah.
Or you see it in other people. You go to help them and they'll say, no, I couldn't possibly have that, right? So that's like your defense mechanism kicking in and protecting you from having what you can have in your life.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just an open book, so people offer to help me all the time, and I always say yes, and delighted. And that simple thing, actually, that if people want a tip from this video, there is a simple tip for you. Whenever you say somebody offers to help you, say yes, thank you. If you just say yes instead of no when people offer to help you, you bring an awful lot more abundance into your life. And people love helping other people. I like helping other people. It's what I spend my lifetime doing, you know. So, but it's our defensiveness, our ego. It's in fear, you know. What's the motive of this person that wants to help me? They're trying to get one over on me. What do they want?
Yeah.
The suspicion, you know.
Yeah.
that has us not do that.
Definitely. I went to join a group not so long back, and the suspicion of them I just found ridiculous. That's why I didn't join them in the end. It was almost like my intentions were all bad. And I was just coming from a place of love, you know.
Yeah, I joined an organization that shall be nameless, because I don't want to cause them hassle. But they were a well-known international organization that helped people with mental health issues. And I went along as a participant. And I was come from a place of love, powerful place of love, grant you that. And they couldn't have it at all. Actually, they walked out of the meeting after 2 or 3 visits from me. They started walking out of the meeting, and they asked me to leave, you know. And people don't realize, you see, when you walk the spiritual path, you actually the challenges increase, they don't decrease. And those same challenges bring you into greater and greater alignment with your true and authentic self, because you have to be content with your own space. You have to be in solitude a lot of the time, and you need to grow to like that and to love your own company, and to love, and that teaches you to love and to fall in love with yourself. And that's the secret of everything in life, is to love yourself. In fact, you talk about love. I came down from doing a session with people, and I work on a donation basis so that I don't charge people. And I had this beautiful session with somebody, and they asked me, what does it cost? And I said, well, it's on a donation basis. There's no cost. And they were delighted with that. And I came downstairs to my living room, and my heart opened, and the love came out of my heart. It just filled the whole room, you know. And that was a beautiful, special experience. But I had to offer myself in love for that to happen. I have an old friend who is very wise, and he said to me, you know, Wallace, you can't stand in the river of love and not get splashed by it, you know. But it requires courage to live that way, because you have to trust that your needs will be met. You have to trust that, what you need will come to you when you need it. And people are so full, but that very act of learning to do that will clear out the fear inside of you, the fear we all have, the ego part that we all have. It'll clear that out, and then you'll live in spontaneous self-awareness, trusting that life will support you and give you what you need. And it's a beautiful way to live. And it's actually a fearless way to live. And it's a great freedom in it, huge freedom and huge adventure in it and discovery in it. People are bored with their corporate lives and 9 to 5 and everything else. This is the polar opposite of that kind of approach to life.
So edging onto all of that, what can we learn from the story of Jesus, the things he did? What could that tell somebody about themselves? You're talking about love, and it's an example, isn't it, I suppose?
Well, Jesus didn't exactly work for a corporate, did he? He was an itinerant preacher. He just went around. Maybe he had a donkey. If he was lucky, he had a donkey, and he went around. And his needs were met and provided by people that listened to him, and where he went and what he did. All his needs were taken care of until the crucifixion. Which I don't imagine he was too delighted about, because he was human as well as divine, So Jesus is an example, and of course Jesus had the added dimension of being able to work miracles, which was handy for attracting the crowds. He didn't need PR or marketing. He just worked a few miracles and the crowds would be thronging around him. I don't have that capacity, but like the Bible, once a person gets into spirituality and begins to see life from a spiritual perspective, the story of Jesus comes alive, and because you begin to understand it as a story of spirituality rather than belief. And that's a wonderful discovery, because Jesus' story is a wonderful story, as are the stories of any of the spiritual luminaries in history. You could read the Jesus story as symbolic in that way, you could, but my own feeling is it's just a story of an incredible human being and his journey through life, and it was written down, I believe, a few centuries after it happened, so there may be some historical anomalies in it. But remember, in those days, people were pretty good at passing stories on orally, because that's all they had. They didn't have computers and memory disks and things. So it's probably, my own feeling is probably fairly accurate story. A lot of people would have a problem with the miracles in the Jesus story, and oh no, that could never happen, and blah, blah, blah. Absolutely, it can happen. The capacity of the human being to affect the material world around them through spiritual power is massive. And I ran a company and I raised over $500,000 without any grant aid or without any even trying, So that's a material thing to attract money to you. It's a material thing. And we all have these abilities, and we don't know how to use them. That's the problem, because we're not developed spiritually. We don't know how to use them. And because of the ego gets in the way and stops the goodness and the abundance of life coming to us, But Jesus did that. He was able to attract whatever he needed. And of course, as I say, when you can work a few miracles is a good calling card, you know.
Perfectly. So obviously saying that you definitely believe in supernatural abilities, clairvoyance, remote viewing, prophecy, seeing the future, different things like that, you obviously believe possible. Yeah.
Well, certain things I don't know about. Like, I wouldn't say I believe in all of these things.
Yeah.
Some of them I wouldn't know, just wouldn't know. But there's certain, I tend to only believe things of which I've had a personal experience.
Of course.
So I don't believe in the abstract. Oh, it'd be neat to believe in that. And then, oh yeah, I believe in that. But if I've had an experience of something, then I will believe it absolutely. And I have had different experiences in my life, and that has led me to believe things with, it's not a belief then. I would distinguish between a belief, which is a mental construct, and a knowing, which is a certainty about something. And that really needs to be based on personal experience, if that makes sense.
Of course, Wallace, of course. And based off some of your personal experiences, have you got anything that you would like to share with me in terms of a personal experience?
Well, my first touch of a spiritual experience was when I was in a park, and I was walking through this park, and I just come out of years of personal healing, clearing out a lot of the pain that was in my heart and soul. And I actually moved on from that. And when I was in the park, I had this huge spiritual experience where my ego dissolved completely. In other words, my sense of me being in my body and the world being out there outside my body, that distinction dissolved. So it was just the park. And what was interesting was when that dissolution happened, the park came alive with color and music, and I could hear all the sounds were more vibrant, the colors were more vibrant, everything came alive. And I had that experience for quite a while in the park. And with that experience came through to me these really powerful sentences. And then I kind of gradually came down from that experience and went home. But these sentences that were given to me in the park stayed with me. And I thought, what'll I do with these sentences? So I wrote them down. And then I said to myself, what'll I do now? So I said, I have a friend, I'll ring him up and see what he makes of this. So I rang him up and he said, read out those sentences. And he said, Wallace, that sounds like a very powerful start to a book. So, so what happened then was every morning I went out for a walk in the park, and when I came back to my own home, every day when I put my key in the door to go into the house, what was to write, for me to write that day was given to me. And the whole, about 3/4 of the book was written that way. And that was an amazing spiritual experience that led to the birth of a book. And that book is now at the foundation. That book, you see how life works, see how life works. That book, I had the motivation to write it, the inspiration to write it. I launched it and everything else, but I never attended to its marketing or never sought to make it popular. So it never became popular. And then years later, I developed my spiritual path. And then I said, this path needs something at its foundation, a foundation teaching for this whole path. There's all these resources and different things on it. And then I remembered my book and slotted it in there, and it was the perfect fit for me. That's how it works. It doesn't work in a linear planned, sequential, timetabled way. It works in a much more organic, exciting, interesting way. So now I have people all the time reading my book and engaging with my spiritual path through my book, and it's used as a teaching tool in my Chrysalis online meetings, and it has its rightful place in my life. But that happened years after I wrote the book.
And what's crazy about your stories, they all seem to be quite similar. And my awakening was the exact same. I was sitting in the bar until I dissolved and merged with everything. And mine, I felt like I wasn't, I don't know where I was. I don't know where I was observing from, but I was everything. Yeah. And when I finally came back down, the colors and the vibrancy and how I felt was just, and then I had a voice speak to me after as well. Funny as you said, but it was, it's mine was biblical a little bit though. He said something about being a shepherd and sheep.
Our higher self or true and authentic self, these are all words for the same thing.
Yeah.
It communicates with us all the time. I mean, I've had a spiritual awakening, right, where energy is awoken in me and opened up all my chakra system and everything. And after that experience, I became 100% aligned with my intuitive self, right? So that I live 100% out of my intuitive self, my guided self. Now, when I was, but we don't have to have a big experience like that to benefit from our intuitions. We can just start in a small way with some small difficulty or problem we have and seek for our intuitive self to speak to us to help us resolve that problem or that issue. And if we open up to it, it will do that. Like, I'll give you an example how I became a spiritual teacher, right? So this was 10 years ago or 11 years ago. I was praying for direction in my life. I had no direction for my life. This is before my spiritual awakening, right? And I was praying earnestly. And then in the prayer state, a voice, just like you, a voice came to me and spoke in my ear really clearly, this voice. And it said to me, you can do what you like in the world of business, but you'll not make a single cent.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, right. Well, what am I to do then? I said in the prayer state. And the voice came back and it said, clear as a bell, and with loud, unmistakable authority, you're to awaken people spiritually, right? And then I said, how do I pay off my debts doing that? I was a considerable debt at the time. Yeah. So, but actually what happened, and the voice never replied to that. But when I rose from that prayer state, went back into my life, something had changed in me. I had become like much more of an attractive magnet. And it was after that that I attracted a healing that healed me of the worst effects of my schizophrenia. So I was able to work more regular hours. And then I was attracted 18 people to join me in a company. We set up a company and developed a whole online personal development training service, which is now in the spiritual path, you know, as the main feature of the spiritual path, and raised $500,000 to do it. And that all happened as a result of that prayer, asking what was the direction of my life, you know.
Fantastic. So the power of prayer, eh?
Yeah, I very rarely pray now myself, but when I do, I don't think it's how often you pray or anything. It's about how heartfelt your prayer is, how earnest your prayer is. Because an earnest prayer will go straight to the divine. I never prayed for money. I'm not saying don't pray for money, but I never did. But I always got whatever I needed to do, whatever I needed to do.
I think with people that have that little bit like you, it happens. It's like that manifestation, isn't it? The law of attraction, almost this power that pulls things your way, you know, just through will and something within you. I think also because, you know, there's a lot of mental health in the world at the moment. There's more probably. I work with ex-offenders who have got bipolar, paranoid, schizophrenia, all different types of things, and I help them get back on the right path, set them up in a house and etc., and help them for a good 2 years before I leave them. But I believe it's a big issue in the world. There's more diagnosis than ever. That's probably down to X amount of reasons. But what could you say to people that have got mental health issues and through what you've experienced, just to help them, you know?
Don't see it as a disadvantage in your life. Don't see it as some tragedy.
Yeah.
Don't. Because if I hadn't got paranoid schizophrenia, I would never have taken the route I've taken in my life, and I would never have ended up where I am. Because mental health issues, like any disability, can be used to your advantage. Why? Why is that so universally true? Because it exposes us to our vulnerability, and we get to wrap our arms around ourselves and our vulnerability. And when we do that, we're going beyond the ego. We're coming from a true and authentic self. So it's a great way to go beyond your ego is through your vulnerability, your Achilles heel. Everybody has an Achilles heel in life. I have paranoid schizophrenia. Somebody else might have some other mental condition. They might have missing leg. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Whatever your vulnerability, that's the way God can get in.
Yeah. Through suffering, through vulnerability, through pain, yeah? Anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So embrace it, you know, embrace it. Don't listen to negative stereotypes around it and all that kind of thing, yeah?
Use it to your advantage. As an example, I was told by a psychiatrist years ago that it'd probably never work again because of my schizophrenia, right? Mm-hmm. So here I was, I had a company of 18 people working in it, and I'm running it, mm-hmm. and it's a startup in a center for high potential startup businesses. So it's a potentially high stress situation. Now, my schizophrenia made me very vulnerable to stress, very, right? So how was I going to deal with that situation? But what I did was I developed a whole new management style. I had everybody self-lead themselves, be self-motivated. They were able to work where they wanted, how they wanted, wherever they wanted. I provided an office. They could come in, have meetings in the office. So I delegated and organized it in such a way that every day I sat in the office in a startup situation. What's standard situation is that it's of high stress for a CEO. So mm-hmm. I spent the day sitting in the company office, drinking tea, looking out the window, watching the birds go by. People would come and go in the office, and if they needed me, I was there, and they would ask me certain things, and I'd get a decision. And I loved it, and it was the most stress-free time of my life, and it built that company that way, you know. Wow. So that's an example of using my schizophrenia to my advantage. It wasn't possible for me to do it the conventional way, so I did it a whole new different way, and I built an entirely different kind of company with an entirely different approach, and it was far better than the conventional approach and very easy on my mental health, you know.
That's inspirational. That really is. That's perfect. You know, what advice would you give to people, Wallace, in terms of just getting on with the next few years? If it was advice, simple words, quote, anything, what would you say to them?
I would say life is there to support you. Life is there. You are not separate from life. You are a part of life. You are a piece of life. You're not separate from life. Life is there to support you and to meet your needs. The most important thing you can do is to recognize that, to see it in operation, and open up to it by saying yes when somebody offers to help you.
To start saying yes more, people. I really appreciate your time today, Wallace. Thank you so much, mate. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to put a link to your website on the video below and try and push people your way if they want to find out any more information about yourself or anything. And I'll have a little look at some of your videos and see if any of them I could get on my channel as well, mate.
Great. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you, and feel free to keep in touch if you want to, Chad, and I've enjoyed the conversation very much.